thank you to Shirokoi for your support on Patreon. Hello everyone, my name is Vivian and welcome to Following the Plot, a podcast about storytelling, and today I am going to be revisiting a topic that I discussed in my previous podcast, All of the Above, where I was actually, one of the rare times, actually talking about the stuff I do primarily, which is visual novels. I took a revised, at the time, list of my top 10 favorite visual novels, and I listed some of the complaints I had about those visual novels themselves. And it's been almost a year. It's 11 months, almost. So by the point this comes out, who knows when the fuck, but it's been practically a year. And I wanted to readdress some of those complaints because some of them I might have just changed my opinion. Some of them were factually inaccurate, and I'll be going through some of the comments that I received for that video so that I can give a broader sense of what the hell happened. So, let's just start right into it. The list went from 10 to 1 on my favorite visual novels list. I will tell you what the complaints were, I will tell you what I agree with, what I don't agree with, and at the end, we will go through the comments. So here we go. Number 10 on that list was listed as Major Minor. Big disclaimer before we go into this. My top 10 favorite visual novels list has changed since a year ago, surprisingly. So don't take this, the listing of the order, as gospel for my opinion nowadays. Also, something that I tried to say quite often in the original video is that these are my top 10 favorites. So I love these games, but I just decided to make a whole video talking about what I didn't like. Not that that was it. It was just whatever. So addressing Major Minor. The complaints were that it was somewhat forgettable. And I said that it was possibly due to having played it quite a while ago, which is only more true now, that it had one-dimensional characters, it lacked substance, the two worlds were barely interacting, and one of them was less fun, which made it less fun to go from one to the other. The character sprites were static and did not change emotion, which in comparison to how most visual novels are nowadays, at least those with higher production values, can be a little underwhelming. That the unrealistic and over-the-top villains are beaten by bullshit circumstances, and that they just felt out of place. The tonal dissonance throughout the game made it hard to describe the game in terms of genre. Is it a drama? Is it a fantasy? Is it comedy? Is it romance? What the fuck is it? And lastly, that it was an interesting idea, but that it lacked an interesting execution. Starting at the top, forgettable, possibly due to having played it a long time ago. The fact that it still remained in the top 10 does say that it's not quite as forgettable. However, I would be remiss if I didn't say that when I do frequently forget that I have actually played this game. And it very well could just be because it's been a long time, but I don't know. It's, after playing some of the games I've played, it doesn't stand out quite as much. The one-dimensional characters, I do feel like this was a little bit harsh. The characters do show a little bit of range, but when you have such an overstuffed cast, you got to make two whole worlds seem full. Some of the characters can seem a little wooden. Lacking substance. I don't think it lacks substance. I think there were times where I wish it went into certain things more, but I don't. Now that I'm looking back on it, I don't think it lacked substance. The two worlds barely interacting. I mean, I do believe that's still the case. And the real world was less fun, at least to explore and get to know. But there at least was stuff going on in both. So it's not like there was nothing going on in the real world segments, but yeah, it does feel like you're taking a step back. It's like going from the A plot to the B plot in any kind of narrative can make things seem a little less, I don't know, a little less interesting. The static character sprites, that's a nitpick. You, for a long time, a lot of the visual novels I played had very few, if any, character sprite changes. So this game going through entirely with static expressions, it's less, it's not something to be really complained about. It's a very big nitpick, but it really has to do with the fact that it was the first game of a new studio and it's older than a lot of the stuff nowadays. So can't really do much about it. The unrealistic and over-the-top villains beaten by bullshit circumstances. Yeah, those villains do feel like they came the fuck out of nowhere and were like just fucking ridiculous. So yeah, I still agree with that one. The tonal dissonance throughout the game making it hard to describe in terms of genre. I think you could very easily describe this as a fantasy sci-fi adventure game. I don't fucking it has elements of other stuff to it, but yeah, this is I mean, isekai is kind of a thing in this, so yeah, it's not hard to describe in terms of genre anymore, that I'm thinking about it. And lastly, interesting idea but not as interesting execution. I do feel like if they remade this game, there could be improvements made in terms of describing the feel of what you're going for, but overall, I think it did it okay. It's fine. Now that I've done it that way, where I listed all the shit and then went back, I feel like it would go smoother if I just talked about whether I agree with it or not as I went through the list. I feel like I would make it go quicker. So that's what I'm going to try to do for number 9. Doki Doki Literature Club. First complaint was that it's weird to describe as a visual novel, making it hard to categorize. This was mainly because I felt like, you know, it's more easily categorized as a horror game as opposed to a visual novel, but I think that's splitting hairs now. I don't see that as being a problem. It's that's a non-complaint. No replayability because it's not scary again. I mean, that's not why you play scary games again. You're never going to get that scary thing from the first time around. You play it again to try to optimize, try to find all the Easter eggs. And yeah, so that makes no sense as a complaint either. It takes a long time to get good endings, which ruins the atmosphere. Yeah, in a sense, but like that the whole point, you don't make a scary game like that with the intent to continuously re-spook people. Once the twist happens and you understand what's going on with that game, then it becomes a matter of exploring this crazy mix of breaking the fourth wall, what's going on with it, and all that other stuff. So it doesn't lose its ability to be interesting just because it loses its ability to be scary for the first time. That just doesn't make any sense to me anymore. Overplaying ruined the magic. I can see this point. I gave the example of like once Markiplier played it, it was kind of obvious that this shit was not just a cute, happy visual novel, but like that's the world we live in now. The complaint is more about the fact that games don't exist in bubbles anymore, which is old man screams at cloud levels of fucking get the fuck over it. So no, I don't find that as a problem anymore. The illusion was broken by sheer virality. I just talked about that. It's bullshit. And the second game was teased with still no release. I believe there's still not been a release of that planned or teased sequel. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. Fuck it. I'm right next to a computer that has all of human knowledge on it. Let's fucking look it up. Doki sequel. Let's see. While there won't be a sequel, developer Dan Salvato announced that the new Doki Doki Literature Club content is on the way, specifically DLC. So there's no sequel. Fans have sparked rumors of the next game being released sometime around the same time the first game was in the year 2020, and for now all we can do is wait. But yes, a sequel of Doki Doki Literature Club has been confirmed. That's from Quora. I don't know. Okay, so obviously that didn't happen. I don't know. I'm seeing there's stuff about DLC happening, but it's not the sequel, and mixed reports about whether it's happening or not. We just keep on waiting. It's all right. Shit takes time, man. Like, if you think about it, like, the games that I've been playing for 6, almost 7 years now, these are games that if they were developed completely behind doors, you still wouldn't know about Extracurricular Activities or Repeat or Temptations Ballad or almost any of the games on this list, except for the bottom 2, really, I think. And point is, almost all the games I play, you would still not know about them because it takes years to develop games. And the only reason we know about a lot of the ones we play is because they were developed publicly. So, fucking be patient. All right, number 8 on the list was Temptations Ballad. That is moved. That's not at number 8 anymore. It was a complaint. I started off by addressing a complaint that other people have that I don't. Which is that because Shirokoi is doing this, that he's not doing Repeat. And I don't think that is as much a complaint anymore, but that definitely is something that it's true, but it was necessary, you know? And I already said in the original video I didn't agree with it, and I haven't seen this sentiment as much anymore, so I guess it's fine, but I still think, like, yeah, let the dev do whatever they want. No time spent on the lore, just focusing on the characters. That's pretty true, you know. There are times where they like kind of explain, oh, what's going on with this, House Osmia and the fucking the fucking drought and all that other stuff like that does go into it, but like, even as I mentioned in the original one, it only goes into it when it becomes pertinent, and every other time we kind of just sort of exist in a world where we're supposed to assume that this shit is normal, when obviously to the reader it wouldn't be. But at the same time, like, you can't, like, this is usually taken up in a narrative by the audience surrogate character, the character that is clueless and has to be explained things a lot. And Artemi kind of gets that role a little bit in some circumstances because she is so sheltered, but usually that's just a comedy bit. But I don't find it as debilitating because right now we are telling kind of smaller scale stories and our characters don't know of the bigger things going on. So you really only need to know kind of what's going on as it's happening. And having a mystery is, as we'll discuss in a later entry, having a mystery doesn't mean that things are bad. You know? Okay, moving on. Building the world only when it comes up. I already said that. No world explanations. Wow, I really went on and on about that one in the original, didn't I? And then the last one is needless sex. Okay. As I've said multiple times, sex has a place in narratives. I feel that it is used best when it serves the story going forward, but when it seemingly is innocuous, out of nowhere, doesn't serve the plot, gets ignored immediately after, that can actively damage the tension and investment you have in a story. However, I feel like while there have been times where it has been just straight up gratuitous and just unnecessary, like, we did not need to walk in on Hamish and Marrow doing that. That did not need to happen, but it was a funny moment. And sometimes that's literally all you need it to be. Sometimes it can just be fun. Like, and the stuff between Sid and Cole has a lot to do with Sid getting to know himself as a person and what he likes, what he's into, and what he can really do when he's not limited by people shutting him down before he has a chance to develop who he is. And that's something they go into with his dyslexia, that goes into with his social skills, with his mental health, and with his sexuality. So it actually does serve a purpose. And despite the fact that it really does feel like sometimes it just happens, you know, there's not a lot of build up. Sometimes it can just be good. I'm not saying that I fully disagree with this complaint now, but there certainly is times where it's like, okay, we're doing a sex scene now. All right, we'll get back to the plot later. Like, but that's all right. Holy shit, I had a lot to say about the smoke room. That's number 7. Again, disclaimer, I love these games. This is just addressing complaints from a year ago. This smoke room, the smoke room fucking shit, that one got the most, like, what the fuck are you talking about? But like I said, we'll get to the comments in a bit. For the smoke room, let's see. Prequels make the good intentions of those seeking change for the better feel inconsequential, since we know Echo is still fucked in the future. I listened to this last night at like 2 a.m. I had tried to go to sleep like 3 hours earlier, and I just wasn't able to sleep. And I wrote it all down from there. What that means was that I was trying to say, like, when you hear of the characters trying to make things better for the town and to fight through everything, it makes it hard to believe or get invested in the success of those characters' missions, because we know that in the future, in the game Echo, the town of Echo is still fucked beyond belief. That being said, actually look at the character motivations. None of the characters are trying to save the town. Like, the closest you have is William, but at best what he's trying to do is preserve the town. He's not trying to fix it from the hum or the shits that's possessing it. He's more concerned with the immediacy of the murder investigation and of trying to keep the general welfare intact. Murdoch is just trying to survive his fucked up family shit and try to have a happy life. Nick is trying to provide for his family and hopefully not have to do what he's doing. And Cliff is just an explorer who's going to leave the town as soon as he has the shit he wants to write down about. So, like, who the fuck were you? Who the hell was I addressing here? Like, oh, who's trying to save the town? Like, whatever. Plus, as we'll see later on, one of the comments is saying, like, the direct line between the smoke room and Echo isn't defined. It literally could be the spawn of a bad route of a whatever the fuck, but it's sort of its own thing, and it's meant to be that way. It's meant to be separate so that you don't have to directly link the two in every circumstance and see the exact consequences of every action as it's being told 100 years later. What's the next one? It's a prequel to a game that isn't finished. I mean, that's just true. At the time when the smoke room started, Echo was not finished. And I had a lot of gripes with the fact that Echo, upon its completion, needed to explain everything so that it would all be wrapped up and finished. That was my idea of what completing a story was. No stone left unturned, nothing left to the imagination. That's just a naive fucking way of addressing a narrative. That's just dumb. But that was a lot of the problems I had with the smoke room, was like, how am I supposed to get invested in a prequel when I don't even have, like, the shit that I'm already familiar with completed to the point where I can build an investment in something else related to it? But yeah, that was just naive and inexperience and short-sightedness on my part. No conclusion and explanations on the main game make interest in a prequel less. Again, I literally just addressed that. That's nonsense. Tells us a whole lot of maybe something without explaining anything. Yeah, it is a little frustrating, you know, to still not understand completely what's going on with Echo. What is possessing it? Why is it possessing it? We know just about where the source is with the original Murder in the Mines, but like maybe I don't know. But do you need that explanation? A mystery can be interesting, and it doesn't mean that you have to solve it by the end of the narrative in order for it to be an interesting story. Sometimes I wish that we did get a full explanation, but I feel like that's more based on my expectations more than what should be expected, you know? Stuff happens and is moved on from quickly. That does tend to happen sometimes. Like, the tension between Cliff and William and the Cliff route, that just sort of happens. And then immediately we leave, so we don't really have to deal with it, but like, I don't know. I'm not coming up with an example off the top of my head, but like, oh yeah, I don't know. Fuck, man. I spoke about this shit a year ago. When I'm looking back, oh yeah, fucking the example I gave a year ago was the map that we saw with the tribes that would build the fireplaces, and how there was the big circle around Echo where they wouldn't go in. That was a spooky image that really sticks with you, but we received no explanation. And, you know, it was explanation in terms of demystification is essentially what I was asking for, was demystification. We know that the tribes they thought that the land was cursed, and so they would avoid it at all costs. Okay, why did they think that? What kind of curse are they talking about? Do we have examples of people who transgressed and were fucked? Do we, whatever, like, how do they determine that was the spot? That circle was pretty fucking exact. But yeah, at that point, you're kind of explaining the shit away so badly that you're not leaving any room for intrigue, which sucks. What's the next one? The next one. Vague terms lead to confusion. Yeah, there is a lot of, we don't want to fucking address it specifically because it's fucking spooky, and that's a personal pet peeve of mine. I do very much feel like in a more natural situation, you would avoid a lot of, all right, you told me about this earlier, and now I need an explanation because it's too serious now to ignore. If you just were honest and upfront and transparent the whole fucking time. But yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. It fucks up the momentum of a story, especially if you're like building momentum towards a reveal type of deal. And not everyone fucking would feel the same way I do. So some characters are just gonna feel like they don't have to explain themselves. That's just a thing. It just happens. And that's fine. It's just personally annoying to me, but that's not a complaint to be, whatever. Okay, here's the one. It doesn't address James Hendricks and John Begay. All right. I was just wrong here. Okay. When playing Echo, the thing I wanted to see was a game, if they were going to make a prequel, a game where they showed the original incident. When it turned out the smoke room was not about the original incident, but contained a character that was a descendant of one of the characters in it, and is not regularly referred to as the third. I believe he's the third in the smoke room. I was confused. I was like, why would you base a story when you have this interesting, you could show the world what exactly happened, but you're not going to do that. Instead, you're going to tell a story that's based in between. I that just felt like a weird choice to me. I still would like to see a like Echo Origins. Don't call it that, but like the original shit. What the fuck happened at the beginning? Show the actual thing, but at some point you have to say we're telling a mystery. We're telling a story in which a lot of the horror comes from not knowing what is coming after you or what's happening to the world around you. And as soon as you put a face to it, that demystifies how many fucking games in the series now? We got The Smoke Room, we've got Echo, we got Route 65, we've got Benefits, we've got Arches. Like, that's 5 fucking games. So if you added a 6th one at the very beginning of it all, plus for the record, if you add a 6th one at the beginning of it all, that's a long fucking series. But also, you have fucking really affected how everything is micromanaged throughout all the games. It changes everything contextually. You look at everything differently, and the fact that a lot of the games are written by different people for different routes, you're not gonna have that like, whoa, they mentioned that thing, that very specific thing in this one thing that one way, and that gets referenced a million years later, and like, you can sometimes get that, but like the demand to be that specific upon a writer would be a task I would not envy, and I would not wish upon someone else. So yeah, while I personally would like this is what happened in Echo and this is why we have the things that we do, I do very much see the argument of like, if you, as soon as you do that, the series is over and you're just fucking done, you know? So I can definitely see that. But in terms of the Smoke Room isn't addressing the stuff that isn't based in the Smoke Room, yeah, no shit, it doesn't. It wasn't based in that. Fucking hell. So that was just wrong. That was just a wrong assumption on my part. Also, I addressed the Echo ending of Sam as a character, being crushed, being hit by Sydney's father in the truck, I should say, and then while they try to get him out, he gets his head crushed. And as much as that fucking sucks, and it feels so, it feels like, I'm trying to find an analogy that isn't sensitive to the time. It's like, I didn't see The Sopranos, but it's what I can only imagine. It's like having seen a character go through all the stuff that they do and be so invested, and then out of nowhere they just get fucking shot and killed. And they're just dead. And like, I just feel like with all the stuff that Sam has gone through, for him to obviously not even really get out of Echo at the end, which is all he wants to do in the Smoke Room, and to just sort of get hit by a car. Like, it's so fucking underwhelming. But yeah, that's one possible ending, and it really doesn't paint anything on the Smoke Room, as long as you are open to the idea that literally your actions in the Smoke Room could affect that not happening. You literally just see one possible outcome for Sam, not the canon outcome for Sam. What's next? It literally just says, I want explanations and can't get them. Yeah, that's just true. Why is there a telescope in Echo? That actually got addressed in further conversations I had. Is the idea of the Smoke Room portrays Echo at its heyday of sorts, much bigger, much more interesting a place than it is as it's portrayed in the main game Echo, as being a rundown rural piece of shit armpit of the fucking desert. So it makes it a little less unrealistic, but I feel like it gets mentioned somewhere in the comments. Let me see. I know George S. Holy shit. Okay, yeah. Literally says, as for the telescope, I can see what you're saying about it feeling out of place, but progressive schools in this era had some crazy things. Some even had private zoos. Dewey era schools were bananas. And Echo in 1915 is a boom town in its heyday that looks much bigger than Echo did in its modern day iteration. This was also one of the more important eras in time where women were carrying the field of astronomy, and I did mention in the text that it was a big deal, kind of grant, as to why the telescope was there in the first place. Echo in 1915 is a small city and a major mining export before the mass exodus. So yeah, it gets addressed. It still feels a little out of place, but given a lot of what I guess just I, or maybe some others would assume of the time period, it would feel out of place, but at least it's accurate. And in general, it would feel out of place. In reality, would feel out of place. The idea of having private zoos and shit, like, damn. But no, it's accurate to the time. Echo went out of its way to avoid Earth references, but the smoke room doesn't make this effort as referenced in showing the planet Saturn. Yeah, this one only matters to people who pay attention to that stuff. And while it is a little weird that Echo went so far out of its way to make sure not to have real life Earth references, and the smoke room just does not make that effort, who the fuck cares? Like, unless you're trying to read between the lines and try to come to conclusions that were not intended in the first place, it really doesn't matter. But I can literally see another thing in George's comment that addresses that. So I will address the comments at the end of this. And the last thing I mentioned about the smoke room was a lot of people in the game has everyone wants to fuck the main character syndrome. And while it is weird to level that complaint at a literal prostitute, I don't know. It just feels a little weird for the main character to be unprovokedly solicited out of nowhere, pursued by an overwhelming amount of people, as opposed to us pursuing anyone specifically directly first. I don't know, but that literally could just be a part of playing a game as where the main character is a fucking prostitute, a very niche prostitute too. So I don't know. That's the last one on the smoke room. So going on to the Hayseed Knight. This is taking longer than the original video did. I apologize. The Hayseed Knight. The updates take too long to come out, but that's understandable. That's true. But yeah, I would not even make the complaint because of how much it's understandable. The more I've gotten to know about Maxi and the more about I've come to understand about game development, the less I'm like, it takes too long. Like, fucking, it'll take as long as it has to for it to be done right, and you'll fucking like it. Like, that's how I feel about it right now. Where is it? The lore density has too much. Has the opposite problem from Temptation's Ballad. The encyclopedia tells you so much about the world that I really hope to Christ that it actually gets explained in the narrative as opposed to just expecting us to read the encyclopedia, and that everything in the encyclopedia gets paid off. Otherwise, it is just filling up space. But that literally could all just come down to how I chose to address it as opposed to reading them as they popped up. I just read it all at once. So, that literally could mean nothing in terms of a complaint. Tonal inconsistency. I feel like now that it's got reworked a bit, I feel like it maintains a lighthearted atmosphere all the way through. And there are times where it gets more serious and it gets a little whatever, but for the most part, I feel like, especially now, and I don't know if this is just because of the reworking of what I've played so far, and maybe I just don't remember the original build that I played, but yeah, it feels way more like consistent, especially with like the inclusion of the narrator. It really ties it together tonally and keeping you reminded of This is going somewhere. Like the story about how someone who inflates their own reputation became a knight. And now you're reading about potatoes. Like it keeps you invested in terms of where the fuck is this going if you have someone telling you this is literally going somewhere because I'm telling the story about this. And it maintains a lighthearted atmosphere all the way through because they're fucking fun. So, yay. So that one was more than fixed. Short in length, I retract this complaint. Not only is chapter 3 apparently gigantic, but I just haven't played it as much, which is not... I don't have grounds to make this complaint. I just don't. I haven't played it enough to even accurately level this complaint. So yeah, I shouldn't have said that in the first place. What next? The beginning feels unimportant, making it feel slowly paced. Literally, this gets fixed in the reworking and with the addition of the narrator, as I already said. A fear of it not getting finished makes it hard to invest emotionally. This was just wrong. Again, this was just a false reading of tweets. I thought that Maxie said that they were going to stop developing the game after chapter 3, and what they meant was they were just going to take a break for a bit because developing is hard, for fuck's sake. So yeah, as I said, I'll be addressing the comments later, but Maxie also commented, where is it? There we go. And they literally said, I've been making it for 5 years and I'm not stopping anytime soon. So much so, in fact, that I'm giving a talk on being a solo dev in the upcoming visual novel conference in the 23rd of January, which was now a year ago. I hope that went well. But yeah, so yeah, that almost all of these points that I levied against the Hayseed Knight were just wrong. Number 5, repeat. I said the prologue needs to be rewritten because it's corny and incongruent. Shirokoi agrees with this. So we move on. Established main character with name change capability. This is such a fucking nitpick. It literally doesn't matter. Like, yeah, the idea of established character versus malleable main character is self-insert narrative. Repeat has a fucking established main character. The fact that you can rename him is something that Shirokoi wishes he didn't have and does not affect the story. So, like, why the fuck did I give a shit? I don't anymore. Out of nowhere sex in early days is needless and ignored. Yeah, I gave the example of how we fucking like had a sexual scene with Sissel, and then later on Sissel was surprised that we would want to hang out with him. I feel like you can actually spin that in a narrative, but like as being someone who it was just expected to be for sexual stuff or like whatever, and then emotional closeness is separate, or I don't know. But I still feel like there was an expectation of out of nowhere inconsequential sex scenes that wound up, because it happens before the character select, wind up not actually playing into anything in terms of the narrative. But yeah, there's again, like, I feel like the Temptations Ballad handle this better, because there's very little that's actually expressed about Sissel being sexual. So him having a sex scene felt a little out of nowhere. Owen having sex scenes makes sense because he is described as someone who on his surface level is quite open sexually, but that there's more underneath. I actually brought up later the complaint of Owen can't decide if he's Darius or not. And I mentioned that because Darius in Extracurricular Activities is a character that is very open sexually, but there's a hint towards that he is that way, at least in part, because it's what's expected of him and he doesn't feel worthy of actual emotional closeness, and so he supplements it with being basically a service top. And I don't know if Owen's the same way. I don't know, because I haven't played Repeat in a long time, and I haven't played much of Darius's route either, comparatively. So, yeah, we just kind of ironing out Owen's character in perception as well as in writing. I don't know where the duty lies, but where art progress means old sprites need replacing. Yeah. I even joked about it, like, how dare you progress in your skills, Shirokoi? How dare you? But no, yeah, it is apparent that the new sprites are so much better than the old ones that the old ones need to be replaced, because the jarring art style change it's an aesthetic thing, I guess, but when you're supposed to see these sprites as characters and people, it's nice to not have to focus on, oh wow, that looks different, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's even more work for a person who's doing all this shit by himself. So that actually is also something I mentioned later, of the backgrounds. The backgrounds are just pictures with a little bit of filtering on it, and I feel like Shirokoi is good at making backgrounds. In Temptation's Ballad, a lot of the backgrounds are like 3D built with a little bit of filter on it, but the times where he actually draws backgrounds, I feel like he's really good at it. It's just a lot of extra work because there's a lot of fucking scenes and a lot of locations. So I don't know. I feel like it would look better if Shirokoi drew all the backgrounds or got a background artist or something. I don't know. But again, this is not... that would be a nitpick. I would consider that a nitpick now. As well as this one where I spent time talking about how the UI was boring. Yeah, I've seen better UIs, but who gives a shit? It's whatever, man. Just play the game. Okay, dentist. I get it. Sorry, I got a text from my dentist. I got dental work today. I got one of my teeth like filled in. Not a filling, but they put some shit in it to like cover up a chip. Oh, yeah. The amount of people that say an iteration of "I'll explain it later" as opposed to just explaining it now. I already kind of addressed this earlier on, but this happens a fucking lot in Repeat, and it's personally annoying as shit to me. That's not me saying it definitively is a problem, but to me, it fucking sucks. There we go. Sissel is too emo at times. Yeah, sometimes it does feel like his emotional outbursts or his lashing out is justified, and other times it feels like, okay, that's a bit much for this time. But it makes sense. The poor little fuck's been traumatized a lot, so give him a little bit of patience. The Black Cat character reveal. The fact that the whole beginning, the main arc, is the reveal of Philip as the Black Cat. But after the character select, it really doesn't seem to play into much. Like a couple times it's referenced as like an explanation for how Philip has contacts. I feel like in later things, it does get, utilized a bit more, but it is treated very casually for a bit. Like, we just sort of know it, and there's not really any consequence. And, like, I don't know about you, but the people I've known that lived in dorms, them shits were inspected a lot. So, like, I don't know. Who the fuck knows? But I do feel like, especially with like the mafia family shit, having Philip show up as the Black Cat there was a very good tie-in. So yeah, it's fine. Oh Christ! Number 4 is extracurricular activities. I said oh Christ because it's a lot. I really need to fucking blow through this quickly. The original was only an hour, and I'm already at 45 minutes. Fucking hell. The days are too long. The game is too long. The routes are too long. I agree with this, especially if you're not going to skip any days in the narrative. a month is too fast for a lot of the shit to go the way it does, but also the shit goes on forever. I still hold that opinion. Programming changes and less access to guides make rebuilding save files frustrating. That's true across the board. That's not even something to do with extracurricular activities specifically. And also, out of the games that I played, extracurricular activities is the only one that's provided me with guides, and Dine provided specifically me with guides. So, like, yeah, fucking hell, that one's been more than fixed. Darius' character is incredibly inconsistent between being a pure asshole and being a tragic character with assholic tendencies. That is true. There, in some routes, I get so fucking mad at Darius because he's just being an absolute cunt waffle. But then, you know, when you're playing his route, you get closer and closer to getting to know him as a person. And then sometimes he just still goes way the fuck overboard and it's just treated like, oh, there goes Darius. It's like, no, sexual assault isn't just an oh shucks moment. Like, no. At times, trauma with a T replaces drama. That is true in some instances, introducing a heavily traumatic moment in order to give emotional stakes to situations that didn't have it before. But that just happens in life sometimes. I mean, me about 6-7 months ago, back in May, I went to the gym, had an emotional upset, had a depressive episode. I took myself to the ER, wound up getting kidnapped and sent to a mental hospital for a week. Sometimes this shit just happens. I was traumatized by that. I have fucking nightmares about that shit to this day. And there was literally no narrative buildup to it. Like, if my life was a visual novel, there was no fucking buildup to that shit. And it defined my life for like months afterwards. So yeah, shit, trauma just happens sometimes. And yeah. Where are we at in this fucking list? God damn, I talk for too long. Everyone wants to fuck our boyfriend. That gets fucking obnoxious. When you're on someone's route and everyone wants to flirt with them, like, no, that's just annoying. Stop doing that. I still find that annoying. Hypersexuality and needless sexuality. Near the end of the routes, sometimes it feels like the character days are defined by satisfying a particular kink from the audience. Characters that were not at all sexually driven before or were very lightly sexually driven before all of a sudden are kink masters and are always wanting to fuck in the morning and in the middle of the day and in the evening. And sex as a resolution to a romantic route is not always the most satisfying, especially when it seems to alter the character motivations leading up to it, but it's also a fucking romantic light visual novel, so fucking, yeah, it's fine. Just not my thing. I find it gratuitous, but that doesn't make it... This whole thing is just opinions, all right? And it's not even the only opinions. As I've said before plenty of times, I love these games. Top 10 favorite here, as organized a year ago. So, yeah, shit, man. It's not my bag. Doesn't mean it's a problem. The name is too long. Total nitpick here. Having to say extracurricular activities, that's a fuckload of fucking syllables to cram into a title. But it's like the most accurate fucking name that it could be. Nothing else it could be called. And it's a fucking nitpick. I already talked about that. Richard. Richard was a non-factor, kind of southern, a little bit more down-to-earth kind of character, a little rough around the edges. And then all of a sudden, over the course of the audience thirsting about him, he became Buff Darius, to the point where he got his own route when I did not want there to be a Richard route. I was in a minority there. I recognize that. I felt it would be much more interesting to have a Maria route. Not even necessarily a romantic or sexual route, but just, you know, a route about getting to know Maria and her story. I felt like that would be a lot more interesting than a character that was not a factor at all until the audience wouldn't shut up about him. That being said, now that Richard Route has started, I'm softening up a little bit, but I am still... And now that Dine has told me, and I asked him, I was like, did you do this just because the audience wouldn't shut up? He's like, no, I have a story I want to tell with it. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to give it a shot. He has yet to disappoint, so let's see where it goes. But it does kind of take the shine off of being extracurricular activities, because while home life is the ultimate extracurricular, he's not a student. So, like, you kind of ignore where the rest of the game happens in order to have this storyline based at home. And it's a little weird, but let's see where it goes. It's here now. We're getting the Richard route. Let's see where it goes. Wow, I went on about that for a while. Yeah, already mentioned that. I basically said that I wouldn't want to replay the game after it was done because it was so fucking long, which is true. I still believe that. There are nonsensical choices at times, or at least choices that didn't make sense to me, and choices that I don't find enjoyable. Like in one of the routes, in Harold's route, one of the good choices is to make him jealous, or at least that's what I said there. I said this a year ago, is that one of the good choices is to make him jealous. And I felt like doing that to a character that has emotional connection problems and has been left, like, I don't want to make Harold jealous. I want to make it very clear that I'm here for him and that I'm not going to fuck around on him. So yeah, I don't like the idea of getting a benefit in terms of points from doing Harold an emotional harm. That just fucking sucks for me. Again, it's all subjective. Oh, and then it's one or two choices leads to not being on the perfect route or the good ending. That's just how the things work. But yeah, I guess the complaint was that it's very easy to wind up on a not great route. It's very hard to get it perfect. But I mean, that's fine. That's not really a particularly specific thing to this game. Some games are just harder than others. It's just hard when you have so much content to going through and trying to find where things went wrong when it isn't always apparent what the right choice is. But yeah, I don't know. Oh, and then later on, after I ended talking about EA, I was talking about Tennis Ace, which comes up later. I mentioned that EA has god-awful QuickTime events where there's no progress bar. They come out of nowhere and you have to press a key. And yeah, I fucking hate QuickTime events, and those are among the worst QuickTime events I have seen in almost any game. I hate them. I don't even... This isn't... Fuck it. I don't like the QuickTime events. Ew. Tennis Ace is the next one. This is just taking longer. I'm sorry. I was very insensitive at the beginning of this section, where I was bitching about how the words on and in were backwards a lot. Ever since then, I retract this wholeheartedly and in fact issue an apology for how I addressed this one, because Basket, who is the author of Tennis Ace, is not a native English speaker. And the fact that I was so convinced that he was a native English speaker, that he would only have slight grammatical errors, is... I mean, it's a credit to how good he is as a writer in the English language that I was completely fooled. Fooled makes it sound like it's a fucking trick. It's not. I had no reason to believe on the surface level that he did not have a mastery of the English language outside of a few fucking grammatical problems. Like, there are people I know with master's degrees in English literature that still fuck up lie and lay. That's fine. Novelists, I've heard of plenty that don't get that. They, their, and them, all those, it happens. But literally, I talked to him about it, and he was like, yeah, it's just something that I struggle with. And I was like, oh, fuck. The amount of entitledness I expressed and how I was complaining about it was just unacceptable. So I do apologize for how I addressed that in the original video. Especially considering it's such a small thing. Just move on from it. Like, it's not obstructing the narrative at all. It's just fucking let it go. I said the days are too long sometimes. Yeah, I agree. Needless content and conversational fluff. It does happen from time to time where the conversations feel overstuffed and less consequential. Characters gang up to make sure they all get a chance to talk. That does happen from time to time, where it feels like everyone down the row has to say, "Oh yeah, that's true. I agree," and that just feels unnatural. Extra characters aren't interesting and get lumped together and are hard to care about and add nothing. Yeah, these are the characters that have one sprite and tend to all show up all at once when you need to get a break from the main cast. You don't want them to have too much substance, but at the same time, if you're going to use them, make them interesting. I don't know. I just don't like them at all. Yuichi gets shit on too much for being good at stuff and gets hypocritical criticism too much. Yeah, that happens a lot where the friend group, the main group, will get pissed at Yuichi for being good, and Aki gets pissed at him for being good, and he just gets shit on for being good at tennis, and then and at being good at school and being able to pass without trying too much. And then people will also bitch at him about stuff that they do themselves as if they have no self-awareness at all. That is fucking obnoxious. And a year on, it's still a big problem. The prologue's too long, especially the first day. That is true, and that's even something that Basket has acknowledged. It takes too long to get to the character choice. That's subjective. And yeah, I would still say I feel that. The prologue is about the main character and his journey, but after the character choices, the main character story barely matters. The exception to that is June, because the June route permanently alters the main character's story. But as of right now, in Shoichi and Keisuke's route, from what I've played, the main character story definitely does take a back seat. But that's also, it's not what I would like, but at some point when you're on a character route, you have to get to know the other character. So it's going to happen. Steven Universe complained where the main character is in places so that the audience can see it when the main character has no reason to be there, citing the example of the guitar store scene. Later on, they experiment with shifting perspectives, and I think that would have been a better solution to that problem, but it's not a really heavily prevalent problem anymore, so much that I completely forgot I made this complaint. So I guess that one's been fixed. The tennis matches aren't fun because they're not fun. I wrote it down like that. That's weird. And rely on tennis knowledge. You know, if you don't know much about tennis going into it, you're going to make the wrong choice, and it sucks to not be able, where it's like, oh, which is the right choice? You're making a judgment call as opposed to just factually, this would be the better strategy. And if you don't know it, you get the wrong choice and you get punished for it. That hurts sometimes. The QuickTime events suck, but they're better than EA's. That is true. Why is Yuichi doing anything? AKA his motivations aren't defined well. I really don't see this one as being much of a problem. Aki is unpleasant in general. In the beginning, kind of, but that gets fixed as you get to know him more. Aki is needlessly mean, and that's not good. That's not good. Way to write it out. I said that having a child character be over the top, rude, and shoving attitude into things was unpleasant, but yeah, do you remember what you were like at that age? Probably weren't too off from that, especially if you were in his situation. Doesn't make it more pleasant to deal with, just makes it more understandable. So I wouldn't really complain about it now. Shuichi isn't a healthy route for romance because he needs a friend better and the power dynamic is off. Totally agree with this. And I even said at the time, I feel the same about the Spencer route. I feel like the relationship, the friendship going into that route was just not going to work well for a romance in terms of being healthy for the characters, and would be wind up very easy in expectations and in everyone working at a different speed, and there are going to be collisions, and there were. It actually gets addressed in the storyline. So yeah, that complaint is taken care of completely because they actually address it. So good job. I said that so good job. No, so good job. It's actually good. They addressed it. Good job. And the last one is that the bad endings are way too harsh. I feel like the only really bad ending we've gotten so far, or that I've seen, were June, which is, killing one of the characters is very fucking harsh. But, and Jesus, like, fuck me, man, that hurt for fucking months. But, and Shuichi's route, if you do something, go about things the wrong way, it fucking hurts continuously. It's not like a paper cut. It's like a gaping wound that won't fucking heal. Like, it just fucking, it's unpleasant. But, it's telling its story, man. It sucks to experience, but it's supposed to suck to experience. So I don't even, it's just, it's more, literally a lot of these complaints are just like, oh yeah, it makes more sense now that I've thought about it and fucking given it time to play out. Number 2, Adastra. That's sunk a number of places. The sex scenes are unnecessary and barely matter. That is, I agree with that. That is still true. Had to warm up to the art style. Yeah, Haps. I don't... His art style's not my favorite. Let's just leave it at that. It's a subjective thing. At some points it was detracting, but at some points it was great. So, yeah. I had to warm up to it because it is very different from a lot of different art styles that you find, or that I found, at least. The rushed romance between Marco and Amicus is due to time skips. They do skip a lot. They skip months of time they could have spent together in order to get to the finish of the story. And Interia is kind of lifting the load of that, but at times it felt like the romance skipped like development time that it could have used to like actually tell the story a bit more. Where the fuck? I'm trying to rush because we've crossed the hour mark, which means we've officially gone longer than the original. And we haven't even gotten to the comments. Oh, fuck me. I'm sorry. Lots of hints towards Kamia without actually hinting at what is actually coming up. Yeah, it was hinting at a sequel without actually saying what was happening in the sequel. This got addressed with the final scene in Adastra. Literally, that last scene addressed that 100%. It's fixed now. A lot of the characters only do stuff on screen and then nothing off screen except Alex and Cassius. Yeah, like we kind of hear about some of the stuff that goes on, but for the most part, people show up and then they're like, oh yeah, now I'll do something. But we hear about some of the stuff that's happened, but it doesn't seem to matter. I don't know. We don't see much of the other characters doing, or we don't hear much or see the consequences of characters doing stuff off screen until they show up and then do stuff on screen. I don't know. That one's a weird one. Alex gets no punishment for what he did. Yeah, that just blows. I think they addressed it at the beginning of Kamia a little bit, but I honestly don't remember. It's been a long, long time since that game started. Forcing Marco out of the sequel makes me worry about a Final Fantasy II situation. For those who don't know, in Final Fantasy II, the main character of the first Final Fantasy X, because 10 got a sequel, but it's Final Fantasy games aren't direct sequels to each other. So when one of the Final Fantasy games gets a sequel, it is like Final Fantasy X-2. The main character of Final Fantasy X was Titus, and he's not the main character of Final Fantasy X-2. The main character of Final Fantasy X-2 is the love interest from Final Fantasy X, and someone is hitting on and trying to get with the main character of Final Fantasy X-2, the love interest from Final Fantasy X, because Titus, the main character of Final Fantasy X, is not there. It's kind of part of the plot. And it sucked ass to deal with that, because you spent an entire game becoming a very interested and romantically possessive. I don't know if that's a very unflattering way to say it, but you want Titus and Yuna, that's the name of the character, Yuna, to be together. And so for someone else to waltz in and be like, I'm with you now, like, that just fucking blows. And so I was worried that during the course of Kamia, someone would try to flirt or get with Amicus because Marco is not around. That literally is all subjective. It's not subjective. It's conjecture. There's no basis in that, but it is a worry, but it is not something worthy of being complained about. There's just nothing there. There's no substance to that. There's no hint towards it. There's no whatever. It's just a worry. And worries over insubstantive and not at all hinted towards things is not helpful in any way. And then the last one, thank Christ, the last one, fucking number one is Echo, or at least was Echo. Ooh, hint. The art is inconsistent. Yeah. Some of the CGs and the character sprites almost at times feels like they were very much not drawn even in the same style. I feel like that's a bigger complaint for Tennis Ace more than anything, because sometimes, man, those CGs do not even look like they're the same characters. And then there's my big fucking rant about Leo, including the phrase, if you fucking ship Leo with Chase, you're ignoring the plot and you don't deserve to read this story. Get off your fucking dick. Jesus Christ. The fuck? Like, I still don't like Leo, and I believe you're not supposed to. I feel like the stuff we got at near the end of Jenna's route, where we kind of get Leo breaking down and owning up his fucked up stuff and contextualizing it and actually kind of progressing from it, that's great. But what should never happen as a result of that is going back to the shit that was wrong in the first place, which would be Chase getting back with him. Should not ever happen. And I feel like any interpretation of that game that includes Chase getting back with Leo ignores way too much of the characters. However, people can do that. I don't have a high opinion of people who choose to do that, or at least I don't have a high opinion of people doing that. And I feel like it does a disservice to the intended character arc and the intended narrative. But people can have their fun. All right? You don't deserve to read this story. What the hell? That didn't even feel like me. That just was... Ugh. Like I said, I still don't like Leo, but I feel like you're supposed to not like Leo. And I feel like... Yeah, I've already said all of it. But this is all what I felt about it. Doesn't make it law. Doesn't make it even what the authors intended. Just because I came to that conclusion, and that's what I felt that the game was saying, doesn't make it fucking true. I feel like it is, but let people fucking have their fun. Whatever. Just don't expect me to participate, because you. Another complaint about it is the same as the smoke room. Tells us a lot of maybe something. It's very vague, and it's kind of the point. It's still frustrating, but I understand it now. It teases a sequel and prequel before wrapping itself up. Again, this was me desperately wanting everything to be explained in Echo before we move on, but I've accepted that that's not going to happen. And I'm going to try to enjoy for what it is, as opposed to trying to figure out what else it could be behind the scenes or in between the lines or any of that other stuff. Flynn is completely inconsistent, sometimes being a dick, sometimes being hypersexual, and sometimes being contemplative and serious and reasonable. This is a symptom of Flynn being in multiple routes written by multiple people and serving different purposes per the narratives. And yeah, it's no coincidence that the one that seems the most rational is the one in which you spend a significant portion of that route in his head with a perspective shift. So it's a little more understandable, but it does make it weird to try to invest in the character when you're not entirely sure what version you're going to get. All right. Yeah, it's very apparent when routes are written by different people. The writing styles are very different, and the pacing is very different. The conclusions are very different, and even the characters sometimes can be written quite differently. I mentioned that it's legitimately traumatizing. The Brian stuff, the closet stuff, the Leo bad ending, all these things are still haunting as fuck, but like that's not a complaint. It's a horror game. It's supposed to fucking be haunting. It is a little unrealistic that Brian would be so invincible, but he is 1, a bear, 2, a hillbilly, and 3, was on how many drugs that make you less likely to feel pain? So it makes a little more sense, but at times it felt like the dude was literally made of titanium, which was just like not fair. Ooh. But yeah, think of the Terminator. The fucker just wouldn't stop coming after you. That's why he was scary. So yeah, it makes sense. Why does anyone stay in Echo when they don't have to find Carl? Because yeah, sometimes we're not trying to find Carl, which makes sense as to why it would keep us here. So why the fuck would we stay? After the first weird thing happens, get the fuck out of there. And also, why do people live there when the main thing is that people were fucking crazy? You know, sometimes it's because people can't afford to move. All right? It just happens. And sometimes weird shit happens and you don't think much of it. And also, sometimes people are being corrupted in their fucking minds to have less good judgment, which is the whole fucking point. So, like, why don't they just leave? Like, literally, that's part of the fucking problem. That's literally part of the haunt. That's literally part of the corruption of Echo, is to keep you there, to keep you coming back. So, yeah, it makes sense. Again, mentioning how even though the routes are finished, they don't explain anything. Whatever. Again, that's a personal thing. I like it when things are wrapped up in bows, but I accept that there is a certain amount of mystery that comes from the unexplained, and that doesn't mean whatever. I've already said all this. Yeah, already said that. Oh, not knowing which route was canon leading into Arches, because yeah, there are some routes that obviously can't lead into Arches. But depending on which route it is, some characters live or die, and so we don't know which characters are alive or not in Arches, and we're also supposed to more see Arches for its own new story, much like how the Smoke Room was its own thing. You just shouldn't be trying to connect the dots between Echo and Arches every step of the way. So having that ambiguity is fine. It's fine. And then lastly, trying to finish the story without explaining it. Again, fucking hell. I like explanations. I like it when things are wrapped up in a bow and you get a clear story as to what happened, but blah, blah, blah. We've said all this a million times. Now let's get into the comments. I'm going to skim them to address the ones that really add to it all. I'm not just going to read every single one that thought that my Leo rant was funny, which I appreciate it, but still, like, I am running out of time. I have overrun way too much. Magnus Eska says that they feel like, I think they don't explain the curse or monsters in Echoverse is because they want them to be mysterious all the time. If they explained, they would lose all their mystique and could turn out to be lame. Yeah. I completely agree. Oh, the hiccups. Really? I'm gonna have the fucking hiccups right now? Jesus Christ. I'm trying to finish, man. Someone pointing out that the stuff with John and James occurred at the founding of the town some 40 years before the events of the smoke room. 40 years? How do you get to a fully developed grandson in 40 years? I feel like that number might be a little off, but I don't know. That's coming from Magic Guy 38. Yeah, and they also mentioned at the end that one of the writers of the Smoke Room said that Sam's death in Echo is only one of the possible endings for the game. So take that how you will. Nice. Pro gamer is a dead meme. Said, like, thank you for taking the step that everyone else was afraid to do. Yeah. There's a lot of sycophants in this fucking sphere. Talking about a couple of people talking about the rant. Yep. Sorry. Okay, here's one from George S., who is the principal co-author of The Smoke Room. They said, Smoke Room lead writer here. Thank you for reading me and Red's game. I'm happy I got to hear your thoughts. Wish I could tell you more, but the art will speak for itself at the end of the day. Very true. He said, think of the Smoke Room as a spiritual prequel rather than a direct prequel, because this game is more about the town, Sam, and his relationships rather than addressing all the things in the first game. James 1 and John took place in the 1800s, so these characters are already dead. The James in the Smoke Room is James 3, the third. Yes, I remembered that correctly. I will be explaining some paranormal things in the game once they are relevant, but I try to avoid too much exposition since I don't always think it's as interesting or relevant as the character drama. As for Sam and as for Echo, it canonically has parallel timelines that intersect, so Sam's fate isn't always necessarily going to be what it at the very least appeared to be in Echo. As for the telescope, I already read that one. And also, yes, Echo is Earth. It's just Earth with furries, so most things are slightly different. I could have called Saturn something different, but sometimes I'll say British when I should be using a different word, but that's just more or less a mistake that I make sometimes. That'll eventually get fixed. Oh, yeah. And also, Sam is a sex worker who is canonically attractive. The characters who do not want to fuck him, avoid him, are curt with him, do not interact with him, or try to murder him. That one's addressing the everyone wants to fuck the main character syndrome thing. And then they said, thanks for all the time you put into reading. Visual novel community appreciates you. I don't know about that last part, but I appreciate you, and I appreciate you leaving that comment. Ba-doop-ba-doop-doo. What's this? Oh, Lord. It's a comment from Zaffy. It's a long one. Let's see what they say. I agree with most of these complaints, especially when it comes to extracurricular activities, which it was my introduction to visual novels many years ago, not counting Morinatsu. In retrospective, it just has a whole lot of issues, and I wouldn't say it's getting better, especially the unnecessary hypersexualization and whatnot. In the comparison with Tennis Ace, though, I'd like to emphasize the issue with extracurricular activities length is that there are no days being skipped. And then they go on to talk about the pacing. They disagree that they disagree when it comes to Aki, since he does actually have a nice relationship with the MC, and it shows even more in June's route. It's just that Basket is really fond of showing friendship/affection through mutual verbal abuse, which is definitely a bit odd at first, but it's an entertaining enough brand of humor more often than not, and not as mean-spirited as it seems at first. Sibling relationships tend to be much worse than that IRL, so I give it a pass. Yeah. It's just sometimes it doesn't feel like the mutual verbal abuse is fucking fun. But anyway. And then they talked about the Leo thing. Moving on. I want to get to Maxie's comment real quick, because there's a lot of people talking about their own personal opinions, and I encourage you to read them all. The comment from Maxie says, "Hey, I understand your gripes with THK's encyclopedia. It's been hard to handle since day one, but up to chapter 3, that's 100,000 words, over 10 hours of content, provided you don't replay any other previous branching scenes. Chapter 3 took 2 years to make because it's 1.5 times longer than 1 and 2 combined, 6 hours of audio alone, and I had lots to rewrite to help bring the previous chapters to my standard of writing and addressing sensitive topics. As for the project itself, I've been making it for 5 years, and I'm not stopping anytime soon, so much so, in fact, that and I mentioned that part. I make sure to share when I'm down precisely so people can easily see that the solo dev is not an easy path where you'll cheerfully work countless unpaid hours on your own project, and hope you have fun when you get to the next parts." I fucking appreciate so much when the devs reach out to me and talk about this stuff, because it's often a thankless job. So I very much appreciate that, especially when you have someone who, whatever audience size I might have, I have more impact than a random person. I don't know how to say this without sounding like a prick, but I have the slightest bit of influence sometimes. Kind of, maybe. No, God, this feels so fucking gross. What I'm trying to say is that when I say a thing, it tends to be heard by more people than if you were just in the middle of nowhere screaming it into the ground. What a bar to say. Christ alive. But no, I just appreciate it when the devs reach out to talk to me and to explain things and to be communicative. I appreciate that. There's no obligation for them to do so, so I appreciate it. The last one I was going to address, and I'm not even sure I want to now, but it's still up, so I guess I'll address it. It's from a channel called Rowook, where the first line, and they edited this, mind you, so this isn't even the original thing I responded to, but it was talking about my response to Leo, where they started with, "I'm sorry, but your Leo opinion is invalid." God, I hate that. I hate that so much. That's such a fucking pet peeve. Your opinion's invalid. Like, it reeks of people trying to sound smarter than they are and sound more important than they are. And also logically, it makes no sense that an opinion is invalid. Opinions are not fact or unfact. It is just an opinion. But anyway, they continue to say, not only he's punished in-game both by the town and the characters, but also the community, apparently. Leo just unconditionally loved his boyfriend, which in return cut him off from his life without properly breaking up, then later got corrupted by the town. Also, apparently Leo is the bad guy in this relationship, ? When he treated Chase with his entire heart, whatever that means, and then gets pranked by Jenna and Chase. It's his fault for overreacting? Breaking shit is not an overreaction, that is a crime. Yeah, I don't agree with the prank, but loving someone unconditionally is not a defense for abuse, so fuck off with that. But anyway, they finish off with, "You judge Leo based on his actions when he's influenced by the town's curse and how poorly he's treated socially, and jump to conclusion that this is the entire character. Leo did nothing wrong." That is so incorrect. I would encourage you to read what you're talking about if you feel like Leo did nothing wrong, because you clearly missed some stuff. I responded, "You sure have a way of saying that opinions can be correct or not. Disagree with me if you like, but don't try to condescend my don't try to what the fuck? Oh, I made a typo, but don't try to condense my argument into being literally incorrect," because in his original comment, he had the phrase literally incorrect, which also is a pet peeve about people trying to sound smarter than they are. And I can recognize this because I used to do this as a kid, and it's so cringy. They responded, well, you said Leo fans don't deserve to read Echo, so who said the bolder statement? As if, who the fuck cares who made the bolder statement? I don't agree now with the sentiment of if you like Leo, you don't deserve to read the story, because fuck it, everyone deserves to read the story. It's free and you deserve to consume art no matter your interpretation. But don't be a douche about it. And so I responded, boldness isn't the quality you exhibit. It's naivete, among others. I'm not telling you that your opinion isn't worth expressing. I'm saying that your method of doing so is dickish, to say the least. They also edited their response to my response. So the reason I mention this is because, yeah, I expressed a very strong opinion that I have tempered in recent years, or recent year, because it was a year ago that I said it. But like literally incorrect and invalid opinion, and Leo did nothing wrong. Get over yourself. Get over yourself and get a clue of what you're fucking talking about. Fucking hell. But that's whatever. It's still up because people deserve to express their opinions. And whatever. I don't even know. Please don't autoplay shit. Thank you. Yeah, they can say whatever they want, and I can say that they're full of shit and they lack some self-awareness, but whatever. At the end of the day, all that these videos were, the one I'm revisiting, and this one, is just expressing opinions. It's all talking about things that we enjoy, why we enjoy them, and discussing the conflict that happens between my opinion and yours if it happens to be different. But at the end of the day, just because we express an opinion doesn't mean that it's an attack of some kind on the dev, on the art, on the people who enjoy it. There is a separation there. There's a separation between those who enjoy art and the art itself. There's also a separation between the art and the artist. And when you don't regard these separations, you wind up fighting a lot of battles that you don't need to fight. Just let people enjoy what they enjoy, and as long as they're not harming you or others in their enjoyment, c'est la vie. So thank you all very much for letting me talk to you about things that I've talked about already. Explain more of what I meant. Not really what I meant, because I said what I meant, but now what I mean, how I feel now. My revised opinions based off of a year more experience and just a hint more of understanding. So thank you all for listening. If you made it to this part, let me know in the comments down below. Oh God. Which do you like better, ducks or turtles? Pick one. That's how I know you'll made it to the end of the video. Thank y'all for listening. I'll talk to y'all again later. And I do fully intend to come out with a new revised list of my top 10 favorite visual novels, because I made that list a long time ago, 2-3 years ago, something. So let's see how it is now. That'll be coming out probably in many months, because fuck me if my plans don't get derailed. I'll talk to y'all again later. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.